Hola chicos, I am back with a new pod today. I am having one of those days where I just perpetually feel thirsty. I don't know if anybody else experiences this, but sometimes I feel like, I don't know, maybe it must be something I eat, but there are days where I just feel like really thirsty all day. Like I just feel dehydrated. It must be something that I eat throughout the day that just is causing this thirst. But I hate those days because it just feels like you're never satisfied. You always feel like a lacking of water, but then I'm also like, but I think I'm drinking so much water, I might just implode. That's how I feel. Okay, I have recently been pondering this idea and this notion um, of self value, and it's kind of come up from a few different things. I think I was like watching a YouTube video. I was also listening to like podcasts and then watching like some reels about this content, and it was quite interesting. Um, the like things that people speak about made me really think about where we are now in society and like myself, like my self value, like how do I guess assess my own value and my own and like what do I attach my value to? And it made me really think about whether or not you can really detach your self value from what you do in life. And I'll explain what I mean. So I think like there are a lot of obvious cases where your self value can be attached to something like your job, like what you do for work. Maybe it's your achievements at work, or your achievements in a sport, or your achievements in academia. Those are like things I think are quite obvious where it's like, oh yeah, you're attributing your self value and yourself, like how you like value yourself and where you feel like, oh, I feel so energized by that, or feel like good about yourself, is stems from those things. So I guess I would say from external factors that are an outcome of something that you do, but not really essentially, not like fundamentally you as a person, if that makes sense. Because I think that like, yeah, your job could be whatever, it could be really interesting. Maybe you're like an aerospace engineer, but that might not be reflective of who you are as a person and your values and your interests. It's just like one part of you. But I think that so often it's attributed to your whole existence and your whole being. So I'm really curious as to whether or not you can really like fully delineate between these things, and fully separate out like a sense of self-worth from those things. And yeah, is it possible? um I think in some odd way, like on a high level, in some odd way, I think that you are everything that you do. Like your experiences, physical or emotional, make you who you are as a person. So I guess it's whether, and maybe the question is more like whether or not you want to be assessed as a whole person, or like for things that you do. And my answer to that question, I think, is that like it really depends on like the environment you're in and like the audience you're around. But I do think for me, I would say for the people that I really value in my life, um, I want to be I want to be able to be valued as a person, for me as a whole person. And I think for myself, because this is all about self value, I try to value myself as my whole person and not just like one thing about me. But even though I believe that, I think sometimes it's really hard to do that. Okay, so let's talk about that a bit more. Um, so I think actually one of the videos that I watched that was quite interesting was this. It was like a parent talking about how they were really mindful about how they speak to their children. And I think that's just like a super interesting topic, because I think like raising kids is really interesting, and it's a good opportunity for somebody to start fresh with a clean slate and really change like what experiences they had as an individual or as a child. And so I think it's interesting because I guess I'm at this age where I'm getting this new kind of content where it's about like parenting and like, how do you raise a child where they are in the best position to thrive and be emotionally okay and not, you know, buckle under like this pressure of the world. And so this parent was talking about how they don't want to tell their child things like, oh, you're so beautiful, or you're so, like, your hair is so beautiful, or attributes about them, like overpraise them. And it was so interesting to me because I was like, oh my gosh, like, if you, like, what do you then say, right? Like, if I was to say to, want to say to my daughter or my son, like, oh, you're so beautiful, like, how else do I communicate that without them feeling like growing an attachment to it? Because this parent was talking about how, like, if I was to continue to say to somebody like, oh, you're so pretty, you're so beautiful, then, and like give them so much positivity towards that phrase, then they will have an expectation, maybe like, oh, you're so ugly, or you're like, if someone says like you're not beautiful or says something else, then maybe the child over time will create an attachment and like psychological connection to, if I'm not beautiful, then I'm not like receiving positive energy and like um yeah, positive, like a positive, like warmth from somebody, which, and then yeah, so essentially this parent was trying to like not set up their child up to be attached to these sort of, I guess, superficial phrases. And then the same was, I saw this other parent that was talking about how um, their child was, I think their child like played sport or was like doing something performing arts or something in a group environment where it was kind of like competitive or like showcasing your talent. And the commentary was about how he would say, you know, like, he didn't want to say like, oh, you did so well today, like you were amazing up there, and like, you know, we did so well because like you won, you got that first prize, like, and he was saying how he really doesn't want to attach the language he uses to being like, I'm proud of you because you achieved something, which I think I can relate to this one more, and it makes more sense to me because I think I agree. I do think, yeah, if you were to continue being like, I love you and I'm so proud of you because of XYZ, then it's never, maybe then it doesn't become a, oh, I'm just proud of you because you're you, and not, I'm proud of you because of your achievements. And so I can see in that way how, like, I'm proud of you because of XYZ or something that you did becomes like this feeding ground for, oh, I need to do XYZ for mom to be proud of me, or for someone to be impressed by me. So I think those two examples are interesting, and I think they reflect into like most things. Like, okay, like as an adult, right? Right. Like what I experience when I'm an adult is like, oh, you run like a successful business under 30. Like that's so amazing. You're so impressive. And then it becomes like, oh, but if you don't run a successful business under 30, then, oh, your business is just like, you have a business, but like, but you know, you didn't do under 40 or you didn't do under 30. And so if it kind of comes off as like less impressive. And I think that's like a societal thing that we've developed over time, where it's this standard of, oh, it's just competition, isn't it? It's just like the one person does it like this, and it becomes like the standard that everybody has to compare everyone against. And you see that in like sport as well. It's like, oh, he's such a great tennis player, but he's just not quite as good as like Roger or Nadal or Djokovic, right? So I don't know, it's just this endless cycle. But you definitely see it as an adult and as a child. So I completely get where these parents are coming from, where they want to protect their children from falling into that mentality or that feeling with, to be accepted, you need to be XYZ or something, right? And I think personally, like I do feel it as well. And I think that grew with me over time, and I realized it more as I got older and like got further into adulthood. So I think I just want to talk about my takeaways from watching this content. So initially, like I had some good realizations. I think when I was watching this content and like listening to it and understanding different people's perspectives, it made me think a few things. One was, damn, it's so hard to be a parent nowadays. I think like there are just so many more curveballs and like just things to consider. Like the world's so interconnected nowadays, and like you're not so isolated in the knowledge that you can acquire. And because of that, your child is not. which means that you kind of have to get ahead of the ball game in how you educate and you teach your child certain things, because they can learn it so quick. Like, children are sponges, and they could just have one experience and absorb that, and you wouldn't realize how much that would stick with them for like their lifetime. So yeah, my second thought um is this all a bit much? Like, is this too protective? Is this too, like, have we drawn the line too definitively? Is it too, have we crossed into that path where like that space where it's just also, you know, protective of anyone being hurt? And is it just too much? And I think for me, I think I can see both sides of the coin. I definitely see the side of, like, I definitely see the benefit of going out there and learning, falling, failing, like making mistakes, getting hurt. It's all part of the game to growing as a person. So I agree, like, I don't agree with being overly protective. I think that's the reality of the world, because, like, the fact of the matter is that not everybody is as open-minded as each other. Everybody comes in very differing forms. So, like, to live in this world where you think that if I teach my kid like XYZ, then they're not going to be exposed to it. It's like, no, you don't raise like every kid that your child goes to school with, or yeah. But then the other side of me is also like, words really matter, and like building that really great foundation for like self-worth and self-value in a human from a young age, I think is invaluable. I think for me, I was really lucky for some bizarre reason to have a very high level of self-value from a young age, where maybe it stemmed from just me not really caring that much, which I also don't know why I didn't really care that much, but I don't know. I feel like I was in my mom's womb. I was just like thinking I was living in a different life. Maybe my life beforehand, I was like, I don't know, I experienced a lot of trauma and then just learned to not care anymore. So because of that, I think I have a very high level of self-value, and I see the benefits from that. But I see a lot of people around me who don't have the highest level of self-value, and they really attach it to things, and they are very vulnerable, and it doesn't make them like unproductive like members of society. It just makes them human, right? Nobody's perfect. And even though I say like I have a great like level of self-value, doesn't mean be better than anybody else, because I do still feel that same things that other people feel, because I am human at the end of the day. So I think in terms of words really mattering, I really remember like a conversation I had with one of my good friends around, we had this conversation one time when we had a deep conversation about like how what our parents said to us when we were younger really resonated with us way more than we ever thought it would. And it really did change like our path and our thinking from a young age. And just emphasizing the young age part of it, because I think when you're a child, you're a sponge, as I was saying, but you're also super vulnerable to the things around you, and you don't process it as like, oh, I don't need to take that on board and I do need to take it on board. It's just like you take everything on board, especially when it comes from parents. So I think when we were both younger, like, we were told things or a narrative about ourselves that made us think a certain way. For me, it was being kind of told this narrative that I wasn't really going to amount to much. And then for my friend, it was that he wasn't very good at something. And then for both of us, from that experience, we kind of noticed how we responded differently to it. Like, I think I lent way more into this I need to prove myself mentality, versus he lent into like, well, I'm just going to shy away from that from now on, and became a lot more just like shied away from it, and would rather not confront that sort of scenario, or put himself in those scenarios where it had to do with what he was not that good at. So that's why I'm saying, like, I think words really matter, because I'm a case, like, case in point is me, that yeah, someone told me when I was younger that I wasn't really going to amount to much, and I believed it. Like, that became the narrative that I believed and understood about myself. It's how I saw myself. And so then I created this complex where I feel like for me to feel self-value and feel like I'm progressing and productive in society is for me to overwork myself and really be overly productive. And I have become like really restless as a person where I always need to be doing things. And so, yeah, I think words really matter. I think also another example is when I was younger growing up, like I just bloomed really late. Maybe when I was 18 or 19, I really came out of my shell. I physically became more attractive. But before then, I wasn't attractive. I like what society deems attractive. I was just me. I didn't care about all those things. I didn't even think about myself being attractive. I just lived and existed and enjoyed life. And I didn't attach any self-worth to like, oh, my body's like so hot, or like my face is great, or like I look super good in this. And you know what? That phase of my life was just so freeing. And that's why people are like, oh, would you go back and change anything? I'm like, no, I love my childhood. Like I literally loved who I was and had no F's given about what other people thought about me, you know? And so that was such a freeing space to be in. It was so liberating. But when I, started to grow up and build into like body image and like, assimilating to society, going clubbing, like meeting people, meeting boys, yeah, that's when like I saw this real shift in a gradual shift in my own self-value around like, oh, people started to just like pay me compliments. Like I didn't get compliments when I was younger. No one was like, oh, you're just that pretty, you're so hot, like blah, blah, blah. No, like all of a sudden I started modeling because I wanted to, and maybe like I think I was going through body image change. I guess for some reason I decided I wanted to do that. Kind of interesting. And then but I think it also stemmed from me like starting to be recognized as like pretty. And then I was like, ooh, do I have an opportunity here? And then that's why I decided to go into modeling. But anyway, when I became a model, then I think that's when my world flipped upside down because I started to be noticed. I started to go out and like, boys would be like, oh, you're so pretty, and girls would be so pretty, like say you're so pretty, and like people who I never really chatted with or hung out with started to notice me and talk to me. And so then, yeah, it is this like very bizarre experience where you're like, oh, so society really values somebody who's attractive. And so therefore I'm making like more friends and people want something to know about me. And I'm like, that is only inevitably going to like reflect into your self-worth and how you value and see yourself. I think I had the benefit of having like 18 years of my life, very formative years where I didn't have that. So I wasn't as affected by it, but I can totally see how somebody who's like, I don't know, like some children are like super like model-esque looking at like 9. And what if you're like forever told like from the age 9 that you're like, you're so beautiful? Then of course that's going to become what you're attached to and like how you see yourself and what you value about yourself. And so in that like view, I totally like from these two experiences, I totally understand why someone would want to protect their child and take that approach. But in saying all that, I still think that you need to also prepare your child to be battered by society because it's just how it is. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think like me, from my experiences, society is always going to attach. I don't think society is going to change. Like it will like a little bit, but I think people are always going to attach, value to you as a person from what you've achieved, who you are, how you look, without getting to know you. And that they'll just judge you from like one little slice of their life slice of your life that they see of you, and give you that like comment or validation to make you feel like a sort of way. And I think knowing that and understanding that, for me, I think it's so important that I am able to step back from that and remember like who I am as a person. And like back to my podcast about values, it's so important to know who you are fundamentally for yourself, what your values are and like what you really truly value, right? Because if you don't have that, then yeah, of course your values are going to get skewed to what the society keeps telling you you are, or boxing you into. Yeah, so I think for me, over time, I've definitely, I understand that I look different, like, and interesting, that people want to make comments about me and say like I'm attractive or like whatever. But I don't see that for myself as all of me. I see that as like literally one small part of me. And I know I have so much to offer beyond that. And then sometimes it's actually frustrating because it's like people just box you in. I mean, same for my sister. Like, I think, you know, she was super athletic, so good at golf, so like good at all these things. And I think she found it really frustrating that her identity was so tied to like being good at golf. And I think I've given this example in my podcast before, but like her just always receiving golf balls for her birthday. That's like a classic example of like, that's how people see you and value you as a person. And it's just like, well, no, I like a lot more things beyond that. And I am a much bigger person beyond that. But that's all I like see you for. It's interesting. Um, yeah. So I think I see both sides of the coin. I would say though that I guess like maybe this is contradictory, but I do think that once again, as I said earlier, is like I do think you're a combination of like all your experiences, physical and emotional. And so it is you're always going to be like judged and or be provided like I don't know, I guess positive affirmation or negative affirmation based on something about you. But you need to remember that people don't see, not everybody sees the full side, full, all sides of you and you as a full person. And so just because somebody says something about you, like one aspect of you, that's not your value and it shouldn't be attached to that. Yeah. So I think all in all, answer to my question that I posed at the start is can you delineate between, you know, things that you are like all of these things like a job, you know, achievements, aesthetics, like physicality, intelligence. I think that you can as an individual, you can, and you are in choice, but whether or not others are on board with that is a whole different story, and that's not for you to control because you can only control yourself. Okay, I hope that made sense and you enjoyed that. Tell me your thoughts, comment. Okay, bye.